I came from a family where my dad was very sick with alcoholism and probably some undiagnosed mental health stuff too. Um, and he was really like he was my person, despite how sick he was. And his sickness involved violence. And so trauma is a part of what I experienced growing up, physical trauma, sexual trauma. Um, I didn't really realize any of that was, you know, anything other than normal because as a kid, normal is what you experience because you don't really have a reference point. Um, and I vowed to never drink alcohol and was very rigidly opposed to it all throughout high school. My sort of I found solace in a couple of places. My dad passed away when I was 11 um, from the disease and related comorbidities. Um, I was one of six kids. My twin and I are the youngest. I'm the oldest of the twins, so I like to point out that distinction. I have a twin brother, though, who I adore. But I found solace in school and always did really, really well in school and in sports. And I think the sports were a great place for me to metabolize aggression, and anger. So I was very academically performance oriented, I would say, growing up. And I was lonely as a kid, and I didn't really have words for that. So when I got into high school, I was, a very competitive three-sport athlete, and I was being recruited. We grew up on government support and food stamps. My mom, after my dad passed away, went to a training program and got a job. But in high school, I was pretty set on playing competitive Division I basketball, was being recruited by really cool programs all over the country. And then I tore my ACL in a summer basketball game right before the recruiting camp. And that was really, I feel like that was like the last spiritual straw for me, or like a spiritual straw that snapped. And that was right before my senior year. So I was out for most of my senior year. I had to do like dreadful things like to keep myself busy. I joined the play. It was a fine experience, but I just wanted to be playing, not, like playing sports, not playing acting. Um, so at that point, I'd always been a pretty, normal weight, very athletic, very muscular, as a competitive athlete, ate normally. When I was actually as a kid, I remember times of eating so much that I was really uncomfortably full and had to lay down on the ground and sort of recover. And that was with things like pizza, Cool Ranch Doritos, and steak. Because steak was a very rare, like, we hardly ever got it. Most of these things were like, we didn't have a whole lot of it around the house. So, but outside of that, occurring like pretty infrequently, my relationship with my body was good. I loved how my body like performed. I felt strong and good. And my relationship with food was, pretty normal. But after that injury, which was kind of like an identity kind of crisis for me, my relationship with food got a little wonky, like I was having breakfast and then lunch at school, and then I would come home from practice, 2 or 3 hours of practice, and just graze. I would have dinner, and then I would just sort of like snack for the next several hours. Not when I think about food addiction, binge type food addiction or graze type, my food addiction kind of started as a grazing. Not massive quantities of food, but I was definitely aware of being pulled by the food. And, like the obsession of the mind, I would say started for me my senior year, late in my senior year of high school. And I ended up playing basketball at the University of Chicago and got, a partial academic scholarship and did work study. And I loved the University of Chicago. Um, and I still hadn't had any alcohol, and I was very opposed to like the people on my team who were drinking. But I went to the University of Chicago, and in my first quarter there, the wonkiness with food in a cafeteria setting where you have I had people all around me who had parents who were doctors and lawyers and political scientists, and they were talking big ideas, and I was like, I am very different from these people. I felt very different. And what sort of made up that gap was eating. So instead of like, one meal at dinner, I'd have a meal and then another bowl of this and then a couple servings of the ice cream and really just by happenstance after one of these prolonged in the cafeteria for a couple of hours with various people, I was in the restroom and the food just came up, not intentional. I'd never like thought of bulimia or purging ever before. It was just like a physiologic sort of thing, and that was like I had crossed the proverbial line. And the binge eating went from like once a week to a couple times a week to pretty rapidly to a place where I was not able to control my binges and was binging on massive quantities of food. Some of which was like free food that was offered on college campuses, some of which was, food that I was using student loan money to buy. And I was trapped in, I was hooked. And I also started drinking at that point, and the two really went hand in hand for me. So it was either binge eating and purging, and at the end, by the time I found recovery, which is when I was in medical school, that was happening like multiple times a day, every single day, unless I was drinking, and then I wasn't really eating much at all, and drinking. So that was a really painful way to go through college. It was an especially painful way to be an athlete. And I was accepted into medical school early in college after completing my first year of undergrad. So I finished undergrad, but then was guaranteed a seat in the medical school at University of Chicago, and I pursued that. I'd always wanted to be a doctor since I was little. I think because my dad was so sick, and I just wanted to keep him alive. So I got to medical school, and I was still, binge drinking on occasion, but sort of like steady was binge eating and purging. Usually like at night, always by myself. Nobody knew about that. Like people saw me drink and like
I know.
I would stay out till 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. People saw that. Nobody saw what I was doing with food. But the binging and purging got so severe that I had actually started losing weight. Um, and I was disturbed by that because primarily because I didn't think it looked good, and also I didn't want other people to like know I was sick and to like look at me as sick. I think our culture is so sick with regards to body sizes that being like losing weight, even though I was like at a normal weight and went to an underweight, didn't really red flag anyone. But I finally, I tried several therapists. They were like, good luck. We've never really treated somebody with these things before. I was on student insurance, so I didn't have a
Mhm.
lot of resources.